I want to pick up on a comment which has been made here by GHFDT. Another major reason, and we're talking about the NHS and Keir Starmer's claims to have cut some of the backlist today, but the overall sense of doom. And GHFDT says another major reason, Tim, is that the government completely took its eye off the ball in terms of recruiting and nurturing talent to become doctors, nurses, paramedics, scientists, and so on. It's also at times unnecessarily difficult, complicated, and there are so many hurdles to enter these careers that make no sense. For example, in many universities in the UK, you need an almost perfect academic record to even be considered for medical or dental school, which is absurd and makes no practical sense whatsoever. Is someone at 18 years old who has A's in almost everything in a classroom going to become a better doctor or more talented than a student who has a diploma in college or has C's and a few B's? Of course not. For nursing, often they require people that have years of experience working in care or even have shadowed a nurse, which is just silly and an incredible niche ask for people to do. Finally, not everyone wants to be a doctor, dentist or nurse and so on at 18. It needs to be made more accessible for people who are in their late 20s, 30s and older who want to go into these professions to get the education and make them part of the workforce in these professions. I agree with all the things you're saying there, except there are interesting problems implicit in the in the response that should come, and the most important thing is that when you start looking at the statistics, there isn't a shortage of people being trained in British universities. In fact, British universities are training more doctors, medics, nurses today than they were in 2003. Medical numbers have gone up. There's a letter on the 9th of February. I can't remember which newspaper it is, but by Professor Rachel Jenkins, who says we should advocate the expansion of medical places in the UK, and this should be a priority to preserve the medical workforce of the future. But since 2010, medical student numbers have increased by 31%, with only 0.4% increase in positions for the clinical academics who train them. Besides university staff and infrastructure, medical students require the support of junior doctors in their workplace-based placements, but this is impossible to provide with increasing numbers of students on the wards, coupled with the pressure on service provision. As a doctor in her first year of practice, I'm dismayed to have to turn students away, but I am aware that they often do not have the support on the ward to achieve their curriculum outcomes. We do medical students, junior doctors, medical academics and university patients a disservice when we use medical student places and the funding for them as the only measure of the quality of high quality medical education that's available to be delivered in the UK. And North Cumbria, there's another one here. North Cumbria NHS Trust. The number of medical graduates in the United Kingdom increased by 305 since the previous year, with 9,140 graduates. The number of medical graduates thereby reached its highest value in the observed period. And so it's not the amount of training that we are offering, or it's not the academic process that we're offering. The reason we're losing doctors and nurses in this country is because they're going abroad, because the NHS is so badly run. So this is not down to the universities or even down to the opportunities and the skills available. This is down to the bad management of the NHS. It comes back down to bureaucracy. When NHS England is so staffed with bureaucrats that they're practically falling out of the front doors. I was going to say they're falling out of the windows, but that would be a Russian concept. But when local trusts are staffed by people who are academically inept or who have very few academic qualifications anyway, and most of those are not medical, it's difficult to take this concern seriously. I do take it seriously because I think it's worrying, but it's retention, not the not study, which is the problem. It's retention by the NHS, and that means the NHS is simply not attractive enough for anyone to really want to stay. People stay because they're committed to the idea of the NHS rather than perhaps to the shoddy reality that they see, or they have no alternative. But for those who have a great education, I'm afraid there often are alternatives, and our students are taking those alternatives. We probably have about a third more students now coming out of universities with medical degrees than we had in 2003. And yet we are retaining barely 50% of that group. And that should say something. And it says something, I think, about the NHS, not about our skills in training doctors or nurses.